When was the time you knew you were truly in danger? In my early 30s, I worked as a freelance journalist. One assignment took me to Beirut, Lebanon, during a time when things were tense but relatively calm, until they weren't. I was in a cafe near downtown, interviewing a local businessman when the first gunshots rang out. At first, everyone froze. Then chaos. Chairs overturned, people screamed, and the streets outside filled with shouting and smoke. I hit the ground, heart pounding. Bullets don't sound like they do in movies. It's more like sharp cracks, terrifyingly random. We crawled to the back of the cafe, found a service exit, and bolted into an alley. We huddled there for what felt like hours, listening to the sporadic gunfire. Eventually, a lull came, and we made a run for it, ducking through back streets, avoiding the main roads. I don't know how we didn't get caught in the crossfire. After that, I swore off frontline journalism. The risk wasn't just mine, it was for anyone near me, too. Some risks just aren't worth taking. While backpacking through India, I spent a few days in Mumbai and decided to experience the local train system. Chaotic, crowded, and essential to daily life there. I boarded a train during rush hour, and it was worse than anything I'd ever seen. People hanging out of the doors, crammed together so tightly you couldn't even lift your arms. Against better judgment, I squeezed in. As the train sped up, I realized I wasn't fully inside. My foot slipped, and suddenly I was hanging by one hand, the other passengers too packed to help. The ground blurred by inches below my dangling foot. For a terrifying moment, I thought I was going to fall under the wheels. Somehow, a man next to me hooked his arm around mine and yanked me inside with a strength I didn't know was possible. I didn't catch his name. I barely managed to gasp, "Thank you," but he saved my life. That experience taught me two things. Respect the power of crowds and never underestimate how fast everything can change in a heartbeat. When I was 20, a group of friends and I decided to go spelunking in Mammoth Cave National Park. We joined a guided tour for the wild part, the areas where you have to crawl on your stomach through narrow tunnels. At first, it was thrilling, dark, muddy, adventurous. But at one point, we reached an especially tight squeeze called Fat Man's Misery. You had to lie flat and wriggle through a space barely bigger than your body. About halfway through, I panicked. My helmet got stuck. My chest was pressed tight against the rock, and I couldn't move forward or backward. I couldn't breathe properly, just shallow, panicked gasps. For a horrifying moment, I thought, this is how people die in caves, alone, stuck, suffocating. The guide talked me through it, inch by inch, until I made it out. When I finally pulled free and stood up, I almost cried from the sheer relief. I haven't been in a cave since. Tight spaces terrify me now, and every time someone suggests something like escape rooms or adventure parks, I politely decline. During a trip to Tijuana, a friend and I stayed late at a bar and decided to walk back to our hotel. Stupid, I know. Halfway there, a black SUV pulled up beside us. Two men jumped out and tried to grab my friend. I reacted on pure instinct, shoved her away and ran, screaming for help. We ducked into a gas station, where the attendant locked the doors and called the police. The SUV peeled away, tires screeching. We were lucky, incredibly lucky. After that, we learned to always take registered taxis and stay in groups. It was a brutal wake-up call. Not every risk is worth it, and sometimes being cautious is what keeps you alive. I was skiing off-piste with a guide in the Swiss Alps, one of those bucket list adventures you dream about. Fresh powder, clear skies, not another soul in sight. We were carving down the slope when the snow under my skis cracked like a gunshot. A second later, the slope above us started to slide. The guide screamed, "Go, go!" and we raced for the trees. Snow roared down behind us, a white wall swallowing everything. We made it to a cluster of pines just in time, the avalanche sweeping past like a freight train. It missed us by maybe 20 feet. I stood there, gasping, snow in my mouth and eyes, realizing how close I'd come. One wrong move, and we would have been buried. I still love skiing, but I stay on marked trails now. While traveling through South Africa, I rented a car to explore Johannesburg. One afternoon, I took a wrong exit and ended up in a part of town that wasn't on any tourist map. Almost immediately, I knew I'd made a mistake. Broken streetlights, boarded-up shops, and groups of men standing on the corners, watching my every move. At a red light, two guys started walking toward my car. One reached under his jacket. Whether it was for a weapon or not, I wasn't waiting to find out. I ran the light, tires screeched, horns blared, but I didn't stop until I was back on a main road. It was a small mistake, one wrong turn, but it could have cost me everything. Now, whenever I travel, I obsessively plan my routes and avoid winging it. In 2011, I was living in Tokyo when the earthquake hit, the big one, 9.0 magnitude. At first, it felt like a typical tremor, a bit of shaking, no big deal. But then, it didn't stop. The walls groaned, the ground swayed like a ship in a storm, and books and dishes crashed around me. I ran to the doorway, old advice that doesn't really apply to modern buildings, and braced myself. The building kept swaying, and I was sure it was going to collapse. After what felt like forever, the shaking stopped. I stumbled outside with my neighbors, dazed, terrified. Power lines were down, sirens blaring, people crying in the streets. That day made me realize how fragile everything is. Your home, your routines, even the ground you walk on, it can all change in an instant, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Growing up, our house was surrounded by forests. No streetlights, no neighbors for miles. It was peaceful, but also isolated. One night, when I was about 14, I woke up to the sound of glass breaking downstairs. I froze, listening. At first, I thought it was the cat knocking something over, until I heard slow, heavy footsteps. I crept to the top of the stairs and peeked down. A shadow moved through the living room. Not a family member. Someone was inside our house. I woke my parents, whispering what I'd seen. My dad grabbed the phone and locked us all in the master bedroom while he called the police. We heard the intruder moving around for what felt like an eternity. By the time the cops arrived, the guy was gone, but he had pried open the back door with a crowbar. They never caught him. That night left a scar. For years, I slept with a bat under my bed and couldn't fall asleep unless every door and window was triple-checked. Real danger doesn't just steal your stuff, it steals your sense of safety. When I was 22, I visited Australia with a group of friends, and we booked a snorkeling trip to the Great Barrier Reef. It was supposed to be a relaxing day. Swim, sun, maybe spot some turtles. After lunch, we jumped back into the water. I got distracted chasing a school of colorful fish farther out, not realizing how strong the current was. When I finally looked up, the boat was a tiny dot in the distance, and getting smaller. I tried swimming back, but the harder I swam, the farther away it seemed. Panic set in fast. My muscles burned, my throat went dry, and for the first time in my life, I genuinely thought, this is it. This is how it ends. I forced myself to stop fighting and floated on my back, waving one arm and hoping someone would see me. Eventually, one of the crew spotted me with binoculars and a rescue dinghy sped out. Back on the boat, I was shaking so badly I couldn't even hold a cup of water. They told me if I hadn't stayed calm, I would have exhausted myself and gone under. Since then, every time I'm near the ocean, I remember that feeling of utter helplessness. And I never underestimate the sea. When I was backpacking through South America, I spent a few days in Rio. Everyone warned me about street crime, but I figured if I stuck to busy areas, I'd be fine. One evening, I took a wrong turn leaving a market and ended up on a deserted side street. Before I knew it, two guys stepped out in front of me. One pulled out a knife, the other blocked the way behind. I handed over my wallet and phone without arguing. The guy with the knife laughed and gestured for my backpack. It had my passport, all my cash, my ticket out of the country. I panicked. Instead of handing it over, I turned and ran, straight into traffic. Horns blared, cars swerved, but somehow I made it to the other side of the road. The guys didn't chase me. Too risky for them, I guess. I ducked into a nearby shop, gasping for air, and the owner locked the door and called the police. I was lucky, stupidly, recklessly lucky. After that, I carried a dummy wallet and kept my real valuables hidden deep in my clothes. It was a rainy evening, and I was driving home from a late shift in London. The motorway was slick. Visibility was terrible, and I was tired. The worst possible combination. I was in the middle lane, trying to stay cautious, when the car in front of me slammed on their brakes. I had just enough time to react, swerving into the left lane, straight into the path of a speeding lorry. Everything after that happened too fast. The lorry blared its horn. I yanked the wheel again and somehow, miraculously, managed to skid onto the shoulder without getting hit. When I finally stopped, I sat there gripping the steering wheel, shaking, while traffic continued to rush past. If I had hesitated even a second longer, I would have been crushed. I got a new respect for driving that night and a deep appreciation for boring, uneventful commutes. I was 19, working a night shift at a gas station in a small town in Louisiana. Most nights were quiet, a few truckers, some locals. But one night, around 2 a.m., a man came in wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face. He didn't say a word. He just pointed a gun at me. For a second, I froze. I'd always thought I'd react, fight back, hit the alarm, something. But standing there, staring down the barrel, all I could do was raise my hands and nod when he barked at me to empty the register. The whole thing took maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. After he left, I locked the doors and called the cops, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The worst part? He was never caught. For months after, I jumped at every sudden noise, flinched whenever the door chimed. I quit that job soon after. Real danger doesn't feel like the movies. No slow-motion heroics. It's raw, paralyzing, and leaves a mark long after it's gone. When I was 23, a few friends and I decided to hike a trail in Colorado that was known for its incredible views, but also its difficulty. We were cocky, young, fit, and totally unprepared. About halfway up, the weather shifted fast. One moment it was clear, and the next, thick fog rolled in, swallowing the trail. Visibility dropped to maybe 5 feet. We decided to push forward, relying on a GPS app on someone's phone. At some point, the path narrowed, steep cliffs on both sides. I was leading, walking slowly, when the ground under my foot just gave way. Loose gravel slid down the slope, and suddenly I was clinging to the edge, one foot dangling in open air. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. The drop beneath me was at least a couple 100 feet, enough to know that if I slipped, there would be no coming back. My friends rushed to help, forming a human chain to pull me back up. Even now, years later, I remember the sheer panic, the icy sweat on my back, the burn in my hands as I grabbed the rough rocks. We turned around right after that. No summit was worth dying for. That moment changed how I approached the outdoors. Never again without proper prep, gear, and a healthy respect for the mountain.